Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is Australian artist Dina Lynch, also known as Jaguar Jonze. On June 3rd, Dina releases the debut Jaguar Jonze album called Bunny Mode. The record's title may sound upbeat and playful, but the story behind it is heartbreaking, because Bunny Mode describes the behaviour Dina used as a coping mechanism when she was abused as a child. Dina is a survivor in the very real sense of the word, having not only made it through her childhood, but as an adult she was sexually assaulted by two music producers. She responded by bravely speaking out, and in doing so became one of the leading voices of Australia's Me Too movement. Her advocacy work has played a big part in Jaguar Jonze's public profile, but so too has her boundless creativity. Jaguar Jonze is just one of Dina's creative outlets, with Spectator Jonze focusing on visual art and Dusky Jonze on photography. We talk about Dina's life, her art and her advocacy work in this interview, but we started by talking about the debut Jaguar Jonze album, Bunny Mode. When you think back to 2018, when Dina Lynch becomes Jaguar Jonze, publicly at least, could you have envisaged making an album that is as strong and as brave as Bunny Mode back then?
No, not at all, because I was completely a different person back then. I think creating Bunny Mode was really a journey of self-discovery as well, and it really coincided with my advocacy, and that in turn really helped open up my artistry as well, because through the advocacy and through speaking up and finding my power, I was able to be more honest with myself as well and find more courage to speak my truth.
Doing that work, was it the experiences of other people as well that emboldened you, or was it just the fact that you were actually giving voice to the trauma that you had experienced that emboldened you?
It's definitely both. And that is because, 2018, Dina was just starting to begin that journey of finding power in myself and speaking my truth and doing something that's for me and not for anyone else. And that's the purpose of Jaguar Jonze. Jaguar Jonze was this almost, alter ego that existed 5% in me. And during this journey, it's become it's growing, to become like something I am every day.
Yeah.
And I think that courage is given to me by other people, because the silencing, the fact that people want to silence those that have been affected by trauma and abuse is the fear that they put inside us. And so we continue to live in that fear, and we're so afraid of breaking out of it. But when you are in the company of other people that have gone through similar things, or others who understand what you've gone through and stand side by side with you, you're able to realize that you're actually not isolated at all, and that what has been done to you is so wrong. And so together we can kind of start breaking that cycle of silence.
And that realization, that's come about in the past couple of years. Has it come about since the Jaguar Jonze project?
Yes, definitely. I think everything was like this kind of baby step journey. And then when I was thrusted into this kind of front line of the Me Too Australian music industry movement, it was this kind of boot camp of having to face my demons and deciding what is right and wrong and what I'm going to stick by, because there are all these elements at play that's trying to test you. And that is, people wanting to threaten my career, or to make it really difficult, or to, stigmatize me, or want to make me seem like I am crazy, or, lying. And it was so testing that I just knew that I had to keep strong every day and fight for what I believe in. And that in turn really forced Jaguar Jonze and, the inner child in me to stand up for myself and speak out.
I mean, to give people a little bit of context around what you've just been talking about.
Sorry, there was no context.
Well, I guess particularly with the advocacy work you've done, that sprung from an incident where you experienced sexual assault at the hand of two music producers in Melbourne, and you spoke out about that. And in doing so became almost, as you mentioned, a bit of a figurehead for the Me Too experience in the music industry in Australia. And I know that in the wake of that, you also opened your Instagram DMs for other people who had experienced sexual assault to feel like they had a safe space and confide in you and talk to you about it. And you've touched upon the incredible changes that brought about in you, but you also mentioned that idea of, I guess, the fear that it could ruin your career, which I think is such, I mean, it's a horrifying thought. It's a horrifying thing that you have to contend with. But was that a very real fear that you thought that by speaking out, that could end your career almost before it's begun as Jaguar Jonze?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it still is my fear today. And sometimes I am so confronted with it, black and white, in the media or in the way the public perceive things. As a woman of color as well, I am often quite quickly discarded and pushed to the side and carved out of narratives. So I see this silencing so often in pieces about the Me Too movement in Australian music industry, and how I just kind of get scrubbed out of the history when I took that risk and I took that sacrifice, and it's really difficult to confront every single day. And sometimes you just don't even know, right? Like, I sit and go, was I not programmed because of the fact that maybe people think that I am a shit stirrer and that I'm going to, speak my truth on certain things, and, people are scared of wanting to be involved with someone that is uncomfortable or being so assertive about things that are wrong and fighting for justice. Like, I understand why people would just pick the easy route sometimes. But yeah, it is a sacrifice that I feel has affected my career. But I also know that because of what I decided to do, I am now surrounded by a support network that I never had when I didn't speak out, and people that really go out of their way to support me. My connection with fans and the audience around me, it has improved, is so special to me, and has just grown tenfold because of my vulnerability to put myself out there, and their reciprocation of their vulnerability back to me. And that, to me, is what music is all about. It's that connection. So that's what drives me every day.
And I think when you consider the title of the album, Bunny Mode, and the explanation behind that title and what that means to you, I think that just shows how far you've come.
Totally.
Everything you've just been speaking about there, and that decision to be strong and to be brave and to cast aside your fears and put your experiences out there. But Bunny Mode speaks of a time in your life when you didn't have that. Can you explain a little bit about what Bunny Mode, what that phrase represents to you?
Totally. So I've always been quite honest with my music. The reason why I fell into music is because it was the only place of catharsis and expression for me, especially as a woman of color. My culture has often taught me to stay silent and quiet and to not bring about shame. So I was brought up in childhood abuse, and so I suffer from complex PTSD, and that is when the trauma occurs frequently. And so it's a more prolonged disorder of post-traumatic stress. And the way I kind of understood it back then was, I called it bunny mode. And that is, think of a bunny in the wild, but the bunny is a prey. And when it sees a predator, instead of fighting back or running away, it chooses to freeze and play dead. And that was how I was able to kind of understand my behaviors and my actions when I was scared or threatened. And that was my childhood survival mechanism to be able to get to where I am today. But what I'm saying with Bunny Mode, and why I've titled the album Bunny Mode, is I've said thank you to that survival mode. Thank you for allowing me to survive till today. But that survival mechanism doesn't work for me as an adult anymore, because I have choices and I am able to make decisions for myself and, bring back the power in my own life and choose the life that I deserve, instead of allowing others to decide for me, which, I didn't have that power in the past as a child. And that was really important to me, because the reason why I was so susceptible to the abuse in the music industry was because it preys upon those vulnerabilities and perpetuates that cycle of abuse. And I think people who have known me for a while in the industry would never have expected me to grow this much and be the person that I am today, because they were banking on that fear and that silence to get the most out of me. But yeah, it's a celebration of the fact that, you know, you don't have to be stagnant and you don't have to stay in one place, and you can grow and you can make changes, and you have to fight every day, and it's difficult and it sucks that you have to do that for yourself when you didn't choose that abuse to be inflicted upon you. But you can make that choice and make that difference. And, you know, it's hopefully an album that connects with someone else that needs it when I didn't have that voice around me when I needed it. And it is a voice that often I do need. Today is a good day, but, you know, tomorrow might be a more difficult one. And I hope someone can connect with Bunny Mode and make that choice for themselves every day as well.
Yeah. The Jaguar Jonze persona, I think I've seen you talk about the fact that that was something that you could have done, like you would have loved to have when you were a child, I suppose, whether to see it in someone else or to perhaps to feel it in yourself. Is that what Jaguar Jonze represents to you?
Totally. And I don't think I knew that at the time. I think I just kind of, you know, formed that as this, as in Jaguar Jonze was given to me by fans and audiences. Like they started calling this person on stage Jaguar Jonze as like this cute nickname, because me talking every day in person is so different to the person on stage. And I think because the stage is this like parallel universe I get to enter and just kind of break down my inhibitions and allow the expression that I couldn't do in real life, in society. And that stage persona is what needs to happen in my everyday life. And so that is totally what Jaguar Jonze is. A fan said this to me once, and I really thought it was awesome. And that I connect with as well. They saw Jaguar Jonze as the big sister they never had.
Right.
And I see that as well. Jaguar Jonze is this protector that I never had growing up. But I can be that for myself now too.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you have role models growing up? Did you have people that you looked up to and respected and could sort of gain some solace from?
Definitely. And I think I'm so grateful that I did have those role models, even if they were just touch and go. Otherwise, I would have found it so much more easier to make bad choices. And I definitely did make bad choices, because when you grow up in childhood abuse and have no foundation or structure or an idea of what human rights you deserve, it's so much easier to go, I'm never going to win against this world, and choose the dark side every day. But I did have those touch and go moments, even if it was through pop culture or through music or, you know, great role models growing up within school or whatnot. I did have some great people around me that helped me out so that I could push through the disadvantages and the bad situation I was thrown in and make the most of it. I'm proud of myself because what I've built has been done by myself and it's never been handed to me. So that is something that I will cherish.
Yeah. Was there a moment where it clicked for you, where you went from being, and clearly this isn't the kind of thing that happens overnight, but was there a moment where you did find that power in yourself, or you thought that, hang on, I think it might be in there somewhere?
I think it was like this, if you break it down into like some movie series, there's like probably like a trilogy going on, and there would definitely be one distinct moment for me when I chose music. You know, I was just growing up going, I need to study hard, I need to, you know, have security, have a roof over my head, food on the table, and climb that social, like societal ladder, which meant the corporate ladder, you know, get a good job, be a suit, you know, have stability. And I was so consumed by that when I kind of came across music, I had never come across passion before in my life, and passion and connection, that changed me. And choosing that for myself was like a permission to myself of, hey, you don't always have to survive. You can actually enjoy life and do something that you really want to do, even if that means it's unstable, you know? And it was this huge juxtaposition for my brain to go like, what do I do? But in the end, obviously, I chose music. And And that was a really difficult decision, but I'm so thankful for it because the person I've become has been because I started to choose for myself and put myself first. But that took a long time to get to a place where I am putting myself first every day. And I definitely think fighting for others as well on the front lines of the Me Too movement is another movie in that trilogy.
Sure.
You know, like I remember being so broken by the sexual harassment, assault and abuse from the two producers. And it sounds so sad, but because it was, I had no one around me and no support. I remember lying on the carpet, like face down in the carpet, just being like, I've hit rock bottom and I don't know what to do. And just this pang of resilience hit my head and go, no, you need to show up. You need to show up for those who don't have this power and this voice and show them that they can overcome something that was terrible done to them. And it made this switch. And I started trying to start speaking out about it. And I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done all the healing I've done for myself as well.
Right. Was that assault made, I mean, doubly difficult if that's possible, but the fact that you'd chosen music, you know, you were just talking a few minutes ago about you'd chosen music and you'd chosen yourself and you'd chosen happiness in that regard. So then you're following music and then this happens to you in a space that you thought was going to be a positive, happy space for you. Was that doubly soul destroying again, if that's possible?
No, I agree with that completely. You know, Bunny Mode is a really important album for me because during the advocacy, I put the artistry aside because I had to. The advocacy was so consuming. And I just thought to myself, the irony of having to put my artistry aside to advocate for safety in the music industry. When I entered in the music industry in the first place to be an artist, and now I have to stop being an artist to create that safe space, that really hurt me and was really confusing. But I knew that was important too because it wasn't just me suffering in that way. Put my childhood abuse aside, even if you hadn't come from a difficult place, people are so often getting abused in the music industry. And if someone doesn't speak out or break that culture of silence and fear and oppression, it's never going to change. And I just know that my background with abuse has given me that resilience to go, you know what, it's not about me in this moment. It's not about that artistry. Put that aside for a moment. Do the advocating. Do something that's going to, you know, impact so much more than just my one and only life. And then use the artistry and bring it back and use that power side by side together. Right. And that's what Bunny Mode is. It's advocacy and artistry together.
It's a real journey, isn't it? It's a real path.
Yeah, I'm tired, bud.
I mean, to give a little bit of context about some of the things we're talking about and just about your path to choosing music, because I know that you were born in Japan and moved to Australia at around the age of 6. Do you have any memories of Japan at all?
Yeah, no, I have so many memories of Japan. My dad still lives in Japan too, so I have, you know, often kind of gone back and forth when I was like more in my teenagehood and as an adult. I have a lot of memories with Japan. I guess I'm a bit of a third culture kid because I was born in Japan, but my mum is Taiwanese and my dad is Australian and, you know, grew up in Japan for the first formative years of my life and then the rest in Australia. So I don't know where I truly belong, but to me, Japan is a really special place for me because that's the first chapter and I bring a lot of that culture in with me. And I grew up with my Taiwanese mother, which, you know, Taiwan is like this kind of, I don't know, child between China and Japan in terms of culture. And so like, it is important to me that I remember all that and weave all that in and share that culture and storytelling through my music and art as well.
Did you see much representation of that culture in the art and the music that you were surrounded by growing up?
No, I mean, I still don't really see it. I would say that Jaguar Jonze, or even just before that, me as an artist, had found a really hard time, like as in it was a really hard time to find space for my music or artists like me to have their music. But I am starting to see that representation slowly come about. I would say in the beginning it was very tokenistic. And so it was so hard because what ends up happening is I go in competition with my fellow marginalized people for this one token spot, you know. But I'm starting to see that open up a little bit more, and I'm seeing artists really push their culture front and center in the Australian music industry. And that's exciting for me because it would be so great for someone who is young and similar to me to see these musicians and artists pave their own path and do whatever the fuck they want with their storytelling and their culture, and not have to be whitewashed and be celebrated for that. So I hope that inspires people to go out and be a creative.
Yeah. Well, I guess you sing about that on the album in the song Punchline. And you got that lyric, we love culture, but make sure it's to our very liking. Make it milky, make it plain, and not too spicy. Is that been your experience, that whitewashing?
Yes. I was just having this discussion yesterday about my fear of releasing Punchline. I wrote Punchline out of frustration. And so I just made it a bit tongue-in-cheek and playful about my frustration of being tokenized so often and finding it so hard to have my music and my culture accepted in the mainstream. It's almost just considered avant-garde or, you know, very alternative because it's different and it's hard to kind of, I guess, understand or consume. It's not the case for everyone. Like there are people who, you know, embrace it with open arms. And so I didn't know if I was going to put Punchline on the album, to be honest, because I wasn't sure if I was going to have it received well. I wasn't sure if the environment was ready to hear such a sassy, you know, frustrated song about my experience in the music industry. But in the end, I figured that, you know, it's got to start somewhere, and it's my truth again. And there are so many artists out there that are in a similar position to me. And so I hope they can find the fun in Punchline as well and take joy in just having a little bit of, I guess, their moment. It's really hard though. Like, you know, a really good example is I got this phone call one time. And that was, they said, we're trying to find 7 artists, you know, and we think you'd be an amazing artist as one of the 7. And I was so flattered that I could be chosen as this one of 7 artists. And then they dropped the bomb, which was we have 2 positions of color.
Wow.
Yeah. And we have one which would be like you, and one which would be like, and then they said an artist which was very clearly First Nations. And I just was so frozen in that moment, because what do you say to that? No, like, how dare you say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, here is an opportunity for your career, and it's presented so blatantly and ignorantly to you, but you need those opportunities. Otherwise you get cast aside. And if you start causing, you know, a ruckus, they'll never want to work with you. And that's the position people of color are often put in, is this, you know, balance of, you know, trying to allow for representation to happen more often in the music industry, but also at the same time bearing this burden of making sure that our culture isn't sidelined and disrespected. You know, it's this careful balance all the time of doing what's right by, you know, the people that are in a similar marginalized position as you, but also trying to push it into the mainstream in wider society. And I don't know what's right in that.
I was going to say, how do you navigate that?
I always just try to go with what's in my moral compass and listen to my gut instinct and decide that for myself, and always be open to criticism and understanding and conversations and listening so that I can grow and be better. Because, you know, my position, you know, in marginalized society is so different to another position in marginalized society. So it's always about being receptive to tweaking and just try my best. And if mistakes happen, then embrace them and take accountability. And all of this is what I'm trying to bring about in, you know, the sexual harassment side of the music industry as well, is I'm not asking for perfection. I'm just asking for accountability and reviewing a system so that we can have representation and safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to go back we touched briefly on your time in Japan and then moving to Australia at the age of 6. And I understand that after moving, there was a period where your mother, before her citizenship came through, you had to move around homes quite a lot. Was that as a family unit, or what do you mean by that?
No, it was very complicated because I was born an Australian citizen and my mum is a Taiwanese citizen. And I guess in that era, immigration was a lot more difficult, and Australia said that their welfare system can raise me and that I didn't need my mother and we didn't need to bring about more immigrants. And so it made it very difficult to unite us and have her citizenship approved. Like, my childhood was freckled with court cases, and it went all the way to Supreme Court, and it was like the final appeal in the Supreme Court, and we literally thought it was going to fail, but it succeeded. And so my mum was able to get her citizenship when I was 14, but
gosh,
that's a long time. Yeah, it's a long time. And I did get to see her so often, and that's a blessing. But it really was a turbulent time, and I don't know how to speak about it properly yet because I'm still protecting my mum and everyone else who has suffered from the system, and I don't want to speak against the system, but it was a really hard time, and we're going up against some powers that we can't just go up against. So
yeah,
it was very fractured.
Yeah. So you were actually separated from your mother during that, or during some of that period?
During some of that period,
Okay.
and sometimes not. Sometimes I was with my mother, but then there would be heavy surveillance, or, it was just very up and down. And I did live with different families growing up too, and but they were great. They were great to me as well, and some weren't. Some carers weren't great. Some carers were amazing, and so I think I'm really blessed to have both. And I'm going to have to just try to remember the great side, because that's what's made me who I am. And even the bad side has too. But I just know that my experiences are unique, and that's what I bring to my art and music.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the fascinating things I think about, given that your career path now, is that when you were growing up as a kid, I understand that music and art wasn't really encouraged as you were growing up. What was encouraged? What were you exposed to willingly from your carers?
I'd say academia,
Okay.
like as in what society deems the version of success would be is, get good grades, do maths and science, do something that's like notable as a career in society, and will have a stable paycheck. And this is where I'm saying, like, that's why it was such a hard decision for me to choose music. If you think about what I've been through and the lack of privilege that I had growing up, even access to education was difficult. And I was really blessed to have scholarships, in my education as well. And without that, I don't think I would have had the same access to resources and privilege and opportunities. But, fighting so hard, and not just me, but everyone around me, to allow myself to have that. And then for me to choose music, is really backwards.
Sure.
When if you've come from nothing and the bets were on for you to fail more than for you to succeed, then why would I choose something as risky as music? And I think I was really trained growing up to not play with creativity and to not get sidetracked, and to just put my head down and study really hard so that we can get the success rate up and security rate up and stability rate up. That was really important. And it was almost like put on me to kind of save the family, because the opportunity was there for me to do that. And that still kind of weighs heavy on me. I'm just going to do it in my way.
Sure.
Because it is my life, and I don't know, I can't turn back from the happiness I get from music and art anymore.
Absolutely.
And that kind of, and I think it's quite clear that childhood was taken away from me growing up, and music and art for me is the childhood I never had.
Right.
So, I get to play, and I get to imagine, and I get to like create, and it's playful, and it started with music and then art and photography, and now I'm directing my own music videos.
Yeah.
And all of this has this kind of like childhoodness and playfulness that I didn't get to have, growing up. So I'm doing life backwards, and I'm really enjoying it.
Is it true that you had a babysitter who kind of introduced you a little bit to music and some of the art that you perhaps had been told was taboo? And he would actually take you to his band practices and get you to stand in front of the mic?
Oh my gosh, this is a great story. I don't even know how you got this, but it was really good. And that's the kind of like hints of rebellion that I had growing up, and the great role models as well that I had as touch and go in my life. I had this babysitter, and he was, he was actually quite young himself. I think he was 19 when he was looking after me. And he had this, band that would meet on Sundays. And so when he would babysit me, it would be a Sunday on a weekend as well. And he would make me sit through his band rehearsals all day. And slowly he would start nudging me and being like, get up on the microphone. And I just remember it was like, honestly, it was like 4 years of him dealing with how scared I was to express myself. This was ingrained in me so like huge. And he would every Sunday deal with me standing in front of the microphone and not making a sound at all for 4 years.
Wow.
And then slowly it started being like, like, and then I got to like about 17 and I started enjoying these band rehearsals, and I almost feel like it was like the longest therapy session that I ever had. But he taught me that I was allowed to express, and not be scared of being judged by others, and to use my voice. And he really took his time to teach me that. And I'm so grateful because that was the exposure to music that I had, and that it wasn't wrong.
What was that moment like? I mean, again, it doesn't sound like there was one moment, but what was that feeling like when you did start to sing and you were awakened in some regards?
Yeah. Oh, it honestly felt like a wave of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the best feeling. I felt like I was so incarcerated by expectations and shame and, trauma and just fear, that doing this rebellious act of singing into a microphone and doing Paramore covers, which is very punky, was so liberating. And I got to feel this power that I never had growing up. And that power was connection.
Yeah.
It really was just connection and genuineness and expression. And I couldn't go backwards from that.
And were you listening to music by this point? Were you discovering music? Did you have that flexibility in terms of your home life to still explore music and artists?
It was really difficult. The same babysitter encouraged me to, kind of like play piano or like, do whatever I wanted. I was terrible at it. And I was so didn't have lessons and, it was very like restricted. But I think it also taught me to have this iPod in secrecy as well. And
in secrecy.
In secrecy. And I had, many versions of iPods, and I'd torrent music back then. Dun, dun, dun. So I was like really going deep into the emo world, the heavy metal world, the hard style shuffling world, punk, but then also like J-pop, K-pop, R&B. I still have all those iPods because they're these like kind of gems of, I don't know, discovery and rebellion that I'll hold on to, even though I don't use them anymore.
Do you not?
Do you have an iPod that you use, Rod?
No, I do not. I do have one, though. I do have one. I had to keep it. Yeah. I couldn't get rid of it.
I actually have like 3 of them, and they're all the different shapes and sizes. I'm sure one day it'll be worth something as some kind of vintage thing.
So what would have happened if your iPods had been discovered? When you were saying you were hiding them? I would say that I didn't really think music was something that I would explore
I mean, I still don't know, like, I don't know scales. I don't know theory of music still. Like, everything is just like I'm holding a paintbrush and splashing it onto a canvas, but I don't know if it's like impressionism or, you know, something, I don't know. I don't know anything. Yeah. And with my band, it's really unique because I now speak in food terminology to explain what I want with my music. And it's taken a few years, but now they understand what I'm going on about. In the beginning, they were like, Dina's just permanently hungry. But, you know, for me, it was actually more art. Art was actually a lot more accessible because all you needed was a piece of paper and a pencil, really. So I actually did really I allowed myself to explore art when I was younger. And I don't know if people still remember like the forum DeviantArt, but it was just this forum of communities. And the name DeviantArt is so good because like that's what I was being, a deviant and creating art. And it's so shameful. I've never said this in an interview, Rod. I never shared this, but I would make photo manipulations with Photoshop. And I was so into Photoshop then because it's on a computer and people can't find art on a computer like as easily. Right. And they were so dark and it's so obvious that I was struggling with depression at that time. But a really good example is if I chose to bring my art onto paper, it would then get thrown out or painted over or burnt and I'd have to watch it be burnt. And so it was really repressed. Yeah, and it was a really like wrong thing to do in my upbringing. But I don't hold a grudge against it, even though sometimes I wonder what I would be like if I had the freedom to, you know, express like a lot of people do since they're children, you know, and how fantastic they become as adult creatives. But I also know that the art and music that I create come from my experiences and I don't need that technicality or virtuosity to be able to express myself well. Yeah. But yeah, I don't hold a grudge because they were protecting me, you know, and having to understand where I came from and how lucky I am to be here and even be lucky to be in Australia and have the opportunities in this country. I understood why. Like, I understand why that was put on to me as a child growing up.
We have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back shortly with more from Jaguar Jonze. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Jaguar Jonze. So you're in these band rehearsals where you're learning to sing Paramore, and then I think you were about 18 when you bought a guitar from a garage sale.
Yeah.
Is it true as well that it was around about that time that a friend of yours passed away, and it was actually that passing that almost inspired you to get that guitar and to think about making the most of the life that you wanted to have? Were they linked to those events?
No, totally. You know, those band rehearsals for me were almost like this just like fun rebellion, and it's just like karaoke session almost, you know, where you know, everyday people love to go to do karaoke and have that moment for themselves. But to flip that to becoming a creator, that's really different. And for me, my best friend passed away. And my best friend was the opposite to me. He was still to this day, I still have like these poems and these artworks that he created at such a young age and just wonder, like he was so brilliant and so free as well. He was a poet, he was a visual artist, he was a filmmaker, and he constantly was telling me, I'm not living life passionately. I'm letting others decide how to live my life. And I just would be like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. I am so passionate about having a roof over my head and food on the table. You don't understand how passionate I am to have that stability and security. But it was only when he passed away and left behind this plethora of art that and it was so I don't know, it was so impactful and it's like soul food. And I was able to kind of look back on my life and go, if I died tomorrow, what would I have left behind? And it's nothing really, you know. And losing him was what it took for me to realize what he was saying to me for so long. And losing someone so important in my life when I've had no I guess, consistent figure that I trusted. And throughout my life, he was someone that I opened up myself to when I trusted the world so little. That grief just unlocked everything, and his impact on my life was this pin. And so I remember I was studying engineering at Melbourne University at that time, and I passed a garage sale and I saw that guitar and I just went, I'm going to give myself the permission that he wanted me to give myself all this time and learn how to play the fucking guitar. But except I didn't learn how to play the guitar. I just started writing songs, and I just would pick strings and go, yeah, that's what I like, and just write these songs to be able to deal with my grief. And so it became this therapeutic process of catharsis. And that's what led me to becoming a creator in music.
That's an incredible story. And I think the fact that you then took that and actually started pursuing music live and recording, this time under your own name, under the Dina name. But that must have been a huge learning curve. Do you remember some of the things some of the mistakes you made, some of the things that you learned, some of the things you got right?
Yeah, so it's in stages, right? Because I still was like wearing this guilt of having to quit society that like the world has set me up for. I told myself, okay, you know what? Give yourself a gap year. Put engineering on hold and give yourself a gap year to go away and make this album of these songs about grief and dedicate it to him. And then it was almost like this bucket list item for me. It's like, just make an album of music for yourself, and then go back to that trajectory.
Yeah.
So what I ended up saying to people is, I'm going backpacking, and I'm doing the bunny ears right now.
Yeah.
It's like I was lying to everyone. I'm going backpacking in America, because in my head I was so ashamed of trying to make this album in Australia in case people asked what I was doing, or, I had so much shame. So I just said to myself, I'm going to go outside the country to America where music gets made, apparently, and and just base myself there and create this album, and then come back and, keep going on this path of studying and climbing the societal world. And I went over there and made a lot of mistakes, created this album. It was horrible. It's not some kind of like fun, miraculous story of like, yeah, then I found this guitar and I was this amazing musician. I never want those songs to be seen in the light of day. Like, they are terrible. Like, we got to be transparent here. Like, there still was this growth of me as a musician to be had. And then I came back to Australia and I said to myself, well, I was going to move universities and study marketing. And I said to myself, well, why don't you do like a cheeky farewell gig? Just one gig. So I said, just one album, just one gig. And so I organized this one gig to say farewell to Melbourne as I moved back to Brisbane, and asked some friends that people knew to play with me. And it was just meant to be one gig. And I finished that gig. And it was an experience like no other that I never had. It was that rawness, that connection, that intimacy, that transaction between the audience and you as an artist. And it's this honest, real-time conversation and dynamic. And I just said to myself, fuck, I'm going to have to do this thing that I just did over and over again. I love gigging so much. So I moved back to Brisbane and I said to myself, I can be a double agent. And I studied, and at nighttime, I would be doing as many gigs as I possibly could, because I fell in love with live performance. And still to this day, live performance is my favorite aspect of music.
Wow.
But it was so good because I just got to do the boot camp and catch up, on choosing this pathway. Like, very late in my life, I just started learning everything, how to be an independent musician, how to release music, going to like all these like network events and panels and information sessions. And I just was like, I became obsessive about doing this for myself. Like, I just knew from my upbringing that nothing was ever going to be given to you. Someone's not going to just walk through the door and go, I see talent in you. Let me change your life,
right.
which some people get, you know. I knew that I was going to have to learn everything inside out. And so to me, in like industry terminology, I went into A&R mode for 3 years, and Jaguar Jonze became this kind of development that I did during that time. And I used Dina and just like, you know, released music and made mistakes and started working in the industry as well to learn that side of things. And at some point in 2018, I was like, well, when are you going to take the plunge? When are you going to stop being in A&R mode, research and development mode? And that's when Jaguar Jonze was born. It was like, all right, let's go. Let's see.
It was like a project that you were working on and until the moment was right.
Yeah, I had to be so analytical about it because I was so afraid of failure, you know?
Sure.
So I worked as a business analyst in a software development firm. And at the same time, I was trying to like do these Jaguar Jonze developments in the background. And I eventually started working as an artist manager and as a music programmer. I was a sponge,
right.
Basically just was a walking sponge. And I just was like, let's boot camp this.
Yeah.
Let's boot camp this. Yeah.
Well, some of those artists that you were involved in the management of, like the Jungle Giants and Confidence Man, Last Dinosaurs, they were big and are still big Australian acts. Was it your business background that prepared you for that? Because to go into that environment, you have to, from this place that you've come from where you don't have a lot of experience in this, but then to be thrust into this management position, was it your business background that gave you that confidence?
Yeah, and I think it's also because I've always been in this kind of like turbulent environment. I am a quick learner and I have flexibility and I adapt. But yeah, definitely it was my business background and the fact that I actually, like we haven't talked about it, but I did still hustle really hard on that initial trajectory that I had growing up, which is like, you know, have a stable job, have a great career and like have a good income. And so I went from being overqualified, you know, on that side and dropping down into this like lower end music industry job and quickly climbing up to get to that artist management position because of this wide skill set that I had from being outside of music. And then being in that role allowed me to learn so much about what needs to happen for me as my own manager then for Jaguar Jonze. So yeah, it was really good. I gave them everything, basically. The way I approach life is I do everything 110%. And as much as I give in is what I get back. And so what I gave in, I was able to learn really quickly and gain a lot of things back. And at some point I had to then choose me though,
right.
And, you know, do something for myself and give that same amount of enthusiasm and passion to my own project.
Sure. So in those years where you're doing the A&R work on yourself basically, and you're sort of piecing together what Jaguar Jonze is going to be, what are the little pieces that you're pulling together? What are you going, yeah, that's what I want. And then you'd see, then the next thing, that's what this project needs as well. What were the building blocks of Jaguar Jonze?
I guess and this is starting to get so like sterile, but the truth is a music project is a business.
Sure.
Like that's really the realization I had. And so I was able to call in my left brain and at the same time, I'm really allowing my right brain to like run around freely. But I realized that, you know, I need to be smart about my branding and I need to be smart about, you know, what my narrative is and how things look. And it was this like balance of having been in the business world for so long, in the corporate world, and understanding that and applying that to the fact that because I don't have a team around me at the time, because no one believed in me, I had to be the best, company structure for myself. So I kind of was really like being distinct. I wrote a marketing plan for Jaguar Jonze that no one else ever saw, but it was for me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, outlined like goals that I wanted to hit, and like, you know, like a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, and also like outline what is Jaguar Jonze? What is the personality of Jaguar Jonze? What is that branding? And how do you want things to look? And being so analytical about that also allowed me to let go of things a lot more once it started being received well. So like that side of me doesn't come out as much now. The right brain is a lot more dominant in the Jaguar Jonze world now, but I had to create that safety net with my left brain and then see that it worked a little bit. And then now I'm a lot less like, I guess, business minded about things, and I'm a lot more passionate about my decisions. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm one word would really be I'm a hustler. Like that really is. I'm a hustler, and I'm very resourceful, and I've done a lot with very little.
Right. So when Jaguar, it's time to unleash Jaguar Jonze on the world, and I think was it You Got Left Behind was the first single, I think, back in 2018. What were your emotions when you released that? Was there fear? Was there pride? Was there what were you feeling?
Fear, definitely fear. Yeah, I was really scared because I feel like artists are often caught in this position as well of like, when do you let go and put yourself out there? You know, I felt like this with my album too, and it's something that I'll always battle is like, when is it good enough for other people to consume? And it's very hard to let that go. It's, for me anyway, I guess as a little bit of a perfectionist, like I never just like throw it out into the world and go like, haha, enjoy bunny mode. I'm like holding on to it while my label is like, let go, like stop, let go. So it's a hard process to know when everything is in the right position to pull the trigger. But at some point, I just realized that I had allowed artist management of other bands to consume me for so long that I forgot why I went into it in the first place. And when I realized that I actually just did the same thing that I was doing in the corporate world, and it is the corporate world, but the music industry side. But I was doing the same thing. I was just climbing up that industry corporate ladder and forgetting why I went into it in the first place. And that was because of my music and my passion. So it wasn't because everything was in the right position anymore. It was because I realized, oh, I'm making the same mistake that I did when I was allowing other people to decide how I should live my life. It was programmed in me to do the same thing, but in the music industry, find that like stability and security and like that respect, I guess, that standing as well in the music industry. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, yeah, I need to hit go on Jaguar Jonze, and I need to quit this job, and I need to just go for it, because otherwise I could just be stuck in this position for 40 years and, you know, do really well, but realize that I never did what I set myself out to do.
Sure.
So yeah, I just kind of, just quit everything. And at the same time, I was starting to see that dark side of the music industry as well, and wasn't wanting to be part of it. And so I wanted to quit all of that as well and go rogue and put myself first. And if I backed myself, see what would happen, because no one else has backed me before. And so that was Jaguar Jonze. It's like, let's go.
Yeah. And then you've built this universe, this Jonze universe with obviously Jaguar Jonze, but then there's Dusky Jonze as well, who's a portrait photographer, and Spectator Jonze, who's a visual artist. So you've built this universe, and then from what you were just saying then about no one had ever backed you before, and all of a sudden people relate to it and people want to be involved with it. And they want to come into your world. They want to listen to your music. They want to look at your art. They want to be involved with your art. What does that mean to you when you start to see that connection and people connecting with what you've built?
To be honest, I felt like I was finally part of society, because for so long I was so outside of it, and really trying to hang on and be like, I would like to be loved and be included and have the same opportunities. But to have that reception from the art and music I was putting out into the world, I realized that there were so many people like me that were in the same position, that were outside of society and related to what I was creating. it's this trick that society puts on us that we are isolated and alone. And you should feel ashamed if you struggle with mental health issues, or, you know, you've come from a dark place, or you're from a broken home or whatnot. It's always this stigmatized label. But what I realized is it's almost like the fabrication of humanity is that imperfection, is the obstacles, and is the difficult moments in life, and the hard and, you know, yucky stuff and the darkness. And that's what I want to push out with my art and music, is like, let's be more honest with each other. Let's have real conversations and allow us to be our most honest selves, so that we can unburden all this extra energy we use to be this other that we don't need to be.
Right. And then when you open the album, going back to Bunny Mode, when you album with Know My Name, and it's got that lyric, "Too long I was frightened, but I am a lion." Is that a line as a reminder to yourself, or is that really putting out into the world how you feel about yourself now?
It's a reminder to myself, because the bunny mode still exists. It's a mode in my programming, but it's a reminder to myself to know how far I've come from. But also it is an exclamation to the world that, hey, I am a lion and I am a big cat Jaguar Jonze, you know, and I'm here to take back what I deserve. You know, I really poured myself into, that song is called Know My Name, because for so long I was so little, and I'm trying to grow my space that I deserve in this world, when for so long I didn't want to take up that space. So yeah, it's a reminder, but it's also this kind of time capsule of how far I've come. And also it's for other people that are in similar positions.
Right. Are there people in your world who were involved with you prior to you become Jaguar Jonze, and prior to you even becoming involved in art, that you're still in contact with and that have seen what you've made of yourself with all of this?
Yes. A really, really great one would be my guitarist, Joseph Fallon. We actually knew each other since primary school. And at that time, I just knew him as a classical guitarist, and he's amazing at classical guitar. And when I was, you know, when I got the guitar and wanted to start gigging when I moved back to Brisbane, I didn't know anyone in Brisbane that played guitar. And I just said to him, like, classical guitar, that you can play guitar, right? Like, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, would you play guitar with me? And he's been my right-hand man, like at every show through Dina and through Jaguar Jonze. And he's one of the very few people that always stood beside me and believed in what I was creating and pushing for, that I didn't even know at the time. And we've been able to kind of really grow and blossom as adults together. And it's been really great to have him be a huge part of that journey. And he always says to me, I can't believe how far you've come, and I can't believe what you've created, and you've changed so much. And like, I don't think you even know how much you've given back to the world and changed the world, and from just this one little small place. And he even says sometimes, like, you were so different back then and you wouldn't even, you know, take that spot on stage. So yeah, it's really great to have him. Yeah.
Yeah. Dina, just before we finish up, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh, like hands down. What I always say is Jaguar Jonze is a collaboration. And especially as an independent artist, that collaboration is necessary for success and survival. I cannot be anywhere without the creative people that believe in me and give so much in me. So I would personally like to say a huge thank you to my band, who is a huge part of the Jaguar Jonze process. And that's Joe Fallon on guitar, Aidan Hogg, who is my bassist, but also my co-producer on all the songs. And so we have a huge part in Jaguar Jonze together. And then Jacob Mann on drums. I love that I'm like doing the stage, like in the actions. On the video, I'm like on stage, like to my right, Joe Fallon, to my left, Aidan Hogg. No one's here in this room right now though. But visually in my head, it's like, and on drums behind me is Jacob Mann. I love them so much, and I say this very openly. I didn't have family growing up, and they have taught me what family means, and they give so much. I openly say that they are like family to me. They are so important, and I love them so much. But also outside of that, my creative team as well. I have, collaborators with the music videos and the artworks and the photography that I always use, and I could go on forever to list them, but I'll just highlight that I love my stylist, Tamsin Holland, Cam Attry, who has dedicated so much in photography and his studio time with me, Bianca Hinton and Josh Tate and Cody on film, and then Louise Graham, Sarah Smith and Becca Gilmartin and Lindy Bester on hair and makeup. They always give so much to me. I really hope I didn't forget anyone really obvious, but I guess as like a summary, I can't be anywhere that I am. Like I can't create the things that I create without the people who invest so much in me. And the reason why I'm able to create so much with so little is because everyone else is giving up so much. So I also want to thank my Patreon, Cubs. I started a Patreon at the start of the pandemic because it was, I didn't know how I was going to get through the pandemic, and it unearthed this community of support that I didn't have. And they're part of my decision-making process every day. They're almost like my record label, like I put out like hey, should I go like gold or red? And we vote on things. And yeah, I feel like from nowhere and nothing and no one, my heart is now full with like everything and everyone. And I feel so blessed to have had that change and to now be able to create Jaguar Jonze a lot more freely.
Amazing. Dina, thank you so much for all your time and for sharing your story with us and for making time to have a chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rod. This was a really great interview and so in-depth. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for having me and allowing me to tell my story.
Thank you, Dina. And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Dina for her time, and thank you for listening. Just a reminder that Jaguar Jonze's debut album, Bunny Mode, is released on June the 3rd. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.